Welcome to the Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. My name is Frank. I'm the host of the show. On this podcast, I discuss and review movies, new and old. This show is available to listen to wherever you get your podcast, including Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, pretty much anywhere you can get your audio podcast, you can find it. Wherever you listen to it, if you do listen to the show, please click and subscribe to the show. You'll get notifications when new shows become available. Also, if you could rate and review, that'll help increase the show's exposure when people are seeking out a new movie podcast. You can also watch the show. The platforms the show is available on are X, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. So again, there, wherever you watch the show, if you can just like the videos, subscribe there, especially on YouTube, Rumble, and X. Whenever the show goes live, you will get an update or a notification if you want to watch the show live. And again, you can also listen to it if you prefer the audio. The website for the show is letmebendyourear.com. You can download every audio podcast all the way back to episode 1 when I started the show back in 2018. If you want to email the show, the email is bendyourearpodcast@gmail.com. And if you have any questions, any movies you'd like me to review, and also you can follow the show on Instagram and X. The handle is @bendyourearpod. I am on X all the time. I love to talk movies, so if you want to engage me there, I would appreciate it as well. Also, if you follow the show on social media, if you can repost my post when episodes come out. Again, one of the goals in 2025 is to increase the viewership and the listenership of this show. So that's a main focus of mine, and I want to do whatever it takes to do that. Lastly, if you're in a position to support the show financially, I would appreciate it. You can hit this QR code right up here on the left side of the screen, or you can go to my X page, again, @BendYourEarPod, and you can donate there to help defray the cost of producing the show. All right, so today I'm going to discuss Gladiator 2, which was directed by Ridley Scott. So it's kind of funny, if you listen to my last episode, I discussed and reviewed Beetlejuice, directed by Tim Burton. You can go back one episode, listen to that review. It's funny because now I'm doing Gladiator 2. It's strange how much these two movies have in common, even though they're completely different genres and have nothing to do with each other. The thing that they really have in common is the fact that they're a sequel to a film, a classic film that came out, in Gladiator's case, 25 years ago, and with Beetlejuice, obviously, over 30 years ago, in 1988. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So, and you have the same director coming back for the second film as directed the first film. So a lot of similarities in Beetlejuice and Gladiator 2. Now, as I get into the review, there's going to be a lot more of that in common too. You'll see in a moment. So obviously, if you remember Gladiator, that came out in the year 2000. Obviously directed by Ridley Scott, well-renowned director, Blade Runner, Black Hawk Down, Alien. He's had a over 50-year career directing films. And I remember when the first Gladiator came out. I haven't reviewed Gladiator for the podcast, but just a little quick blurb on that. I remember when Gladiator came out and became a huge hit, and of course, the movie that made Russell Crowe a star. He won an Academy Award. The film won Best Picture. It was strange because I think once when the movie was getting ready to come out, I think a lot of people didn't know what to make of it, because obviously those sword and sandal movies really weren't box office back in 2000. You really don't see that type of movie being made. I mean, the most famous example, there was Gladiator films, but the most famous example, of course, in my mind is Stanley Kubrick's Spartacus that came out in 1960, starring Kirk Douglas. So Gladiator comes out. It's a fantastic movie, well acted. Of course, you have Russell Crowe, you have Joaquin Phoenix as Commodus, you have Derek Jacobi, the English actor, Oliver Reed. Just a fantastic cast and a fantastic movie. So it's funny that Ridley Scott, 25 years later or 24 years later, because this movie came out late last year, was going to revisit this movie. With Gladiator, it's one of those, when you see the end of the movie, you don't think there's going to be a sequel. When I first heard there was going to be a sequel, I think like most people, kind of skeptical. What are you going to really do with the story, without Russell Crowe? I mean, are you gonna what story can you really tell? So of course, I was curious to see how it was gonna play out. I was able to finally watch the movie. Like I said, I didn't read. I don't think I read too many reviews of it because I wanted to kind of go in not cold, but just kind of have my own take on it before I dive into reviews. So sometimes I'll read reviews before I see a movie. It really depends. I don't do it the same way every time. Some I won't do it, and some I will. In this case, I read reviews after I watched the movie, just to see what the critical reception was of it. I think it did decently in the box office. I didn't check the numbers before I came on the show. I think it was decently financially successful. Like I said, I don't have a clear idea on it. From what I understand, I don't think it was the success that Beetlejuice was, which was a huge hit. I'm not sure if Gladiator was that, and I'm only talking about domestic. I don't know about worldwide, so I don't know what the worldwide take of this movie is. All right, so let me get into Gladiator 2. So the movie starts 16 years after Marcus Aurelius' death. So if you've seen Gladiator, look, spoiler alert, Russell Crowe's character dies at the end of Gladiator. So it's been 25 years. If you haven't seen Gladiator, I don't know what to tell you on that one. This goes past the spoiler alert. So this movie is 16 years after. So you have Rome being ruled by actually twin emperors, Geta and Caracalla. Now, Caracalla is, or actually I think it's Gala, not Caracalla, I'm sorry. Geta. Geta is played by Joseph Quinn. He's best known for his work on Stranger Things. And he's actually becoming quite the movie actor now, or movie star. He's going to be in the upcoming Fantastic Four. So he's ruling Rome with an iron fist, kind of corrupt. They're kind of all over the place. It's just Rome is pretty much a mess at the opening of this film. And of course, Rome is conquering other countries as well. So also at the beginning of the film, you see a big battle where his main general, is conquering a country in North Africa called Numidia. And the general is Acacius, who's played by Pedro Pascal, who you also pretty much see in everything now, who actually is also going to be, coincidentally, in the Fantastic Four movie as well, coming out this summer. So he conquers the land of Namibia. Now, the army of Namibia is led by a leader named Hanno, and Hanno's wife is an archer. He's a warrior. So Acacius overtakes and conquers Namibia, and Hanno is taken prisoner, of course, along with anybody that survived. They become slaves, and Hanno's wife, unfortunately, is murdered. So in a similar arc to the first film, so obviously in Gladiator, Marcus Aurelius was a general as well, ends up becoming a slave, ends up being put into the gladiator rings to fight, and then of course you know the story as it goes in the first movie. This movie for Hanno has a similar arc, and he gets to Rome, and he is battling, and he comes to the attention of Macrinus, who is played by Denzel Washington. So Macrinus is a collector of gladiators. He battles them. His character is kind of he's a, I don't want to say jack of all trades. So basically, he runs the gladiators. He's kind of connected into the politics of Rome, and he's ambitious, and he has ambitious goals for what he wants his life to end up as. So obviously, Denzel Washington, being African American, from what I read, he's based on actually a real character, and I'll get into the critical review of the movie about his character and other things in a few minutes. But his character was a former slave that earned his freedom, and now is in a position where he's has some wealth, has some influence, and like I said, is owns Gladiator. So he ends up seeing Hanno and purchasing him because he sees him brutally win a fight and sees that rage and kind of fire in him, and sees something in him that can get him to where he wants to go with his ambitions. So as you get into that, you get into his kind of the same thing, kind of his training. You kind of see the political situation in Rome. You see that the twin brothers are just basically not really rulers. They're just they are, I don't know, libertines might be the right word, but all they're concerned about is eating good food, partying, watching gladiators, just not anything not having to do with leadership. So Rome is kind of a mess. The Senate is kind of a mess too, because I think a lot of the Senate doesn't support the twins. So as the movie progresses, you get that story as well. Now, again, I guess this might be considered a minor spoiler. I don't think it. I mean, I don't even think it qualifies as that. You find out pretty early on that Hanno is actually really Lucius. So if you remember in the first film, Lucius is Marcus Aurelius' son, with Lucilla, who is played again by Connie Nielsen. She returns to the film as well, and she is actually married to General Acacius. So of course she had to give up Lucius to keep him safe, because after her father Marcus Aurelius died, he everybody was after her, so she had to do what she do for self-preservation. And there's a lot of times she alludes to that in the film through dialogue. She basically says, look, ever since the day my dad died, everybody's been trying to kill me or been after me, because obviously she's an heir, or was an heir to the throne. So her life was in danger. She sends Lucius away when he's young. So Hanno is Lucius. So as the film progresses, Lucilla ends up finding out that who he is. He's continuing to battle. Lucius / Hanno is continuing to battle in the gladiator ring with Macrinus trying to get him to battle to ultimately get to a position where he's close to the emperors. And of course, Lucius is on a mission of revenge. He wants to kill Acacius because, of course, Acacius killed his wife, and Macrinus promises him that if he continues to battle, he will give him the opportunity to kill Acacius. So that's the thrust of the film. So of course there's gigantic set pieces in Gladiator 2, plenty of action, great battle sequences. You see the one, if you've seen the trailer, where they put water in the Colosseum and they have sharks in the water, and then two boats battle with opposing gladiators. And the CGI is very well done. I know when the trailer came out for this movie, there were a lot of people basically laughing out loud at the ludicrousness of it. And again, I'll get to the main gripe I have about this movie, which will lead from that. But what I can say at this point is, it was exciting, it was fun. The action sequences are well done. With Ridley Scott, you're gonna get that, and I don't think you get the same. And it's tough with this type of movie. I know Ridley Scott is known for his visual flair. Of course, Blade Runner, Alien. I think it's not as present here because just of the type of movie this is. I think it doesn't lend itself to that. And like I said, when you've got the Colosseum sequences, obviously you've got CGI. Obviously, the Colosseum isn't completely built, so you have to do it with CGI. And again, the CGI is very good. I wasn't distracted by it at all. I mean, even though it's CGI, it wasn't anything that was off-putting or took me out of the movie. It's just a fact of what you have to do to tell that story. So let me get into what I enjoyed about the movie. So I'm gonna start with Denzel Washington, because a lot was talked about his casting, about the authenticity of a black character ascending that high in Rome, regardless of how he did it. And again, apparently this is based on a true person, but I don't know the history of how that person ascended, or if this is accurate, not accurate. So obviously this movie is not a documentary, but taking that out of there, the thing that's great about first of all, Denzel Washington's always great. And it's great to see him be in a film where he's the bad guy. And he chews some scenery up in the best way. Like, he's just in every scene, he's just in the dialogue with other actors. Some of the best scenes in the movie, he's talking to another character who's close to the Senate, that kind of is a wheeler and dealer that knows what's going on. And one of the funny running gags in the movie is he keeps making wagers with him with Lucius beating the person that he has as his gladiator, and this guy owing him more and more money, and of course Macrinus wanting to get more and more influence. Their conversations are some of the best things about the film. Just the back and forth between the two actors doing it is fantastic. And like I said, Denzel Washington is, you can see he's having a ball because it's basically chew up scenery. There's no subtlety in the acting. It's just over the top in a great way, though. He's fantastic. And whenever he's on the screen, it's phenomenal. And watching him just ruthlessly try to climb the ladder to get where he ends up ultimately getting towards the end of the film is a blast to watch. A blast to watch. Pedro Pascal as Acacius, the general, he's good as well. I mean, Pedro is one of those actors that is just, he's got a vibe about him that whatever role he's playing, whether it's the Mandalorian or other roles that he's been in, he's always solid, and he's very good in it as well. It's great to see Connie Nielsen back as Lucilla. It was also great to see Derek Jacobi as one of the returning characters. I mean, he is probably in his late 70s now, so he was back as Gracious. It was great to see him back. Great actor. So I was actually surprised that he was a returning actor. I did not know that before I watched the film, so it was great to see him back in his same role, trying to assist Lucilla and what she wants to do to try to rescue Lucius. Now, Lucius is played by Paul Mescal. Now, I'm not familiar with his work. I actually haven't seen him in anything else before this. I thought he was fine. I thought he did a good job. It's tough because Russell Crowe is a hard act to follow. So, you know, Russell Crowe is an intense, phenomenal actor. And of course, Gladiator was a star-making role. And he was phenomenal. So he's going to be, that's tough to replace that kind of presence in the movie. I do think Mescal does a pretty good job. I know some of the critical reviews of it just didn't feel he was a strong enough lead in this movie. I guess I can kind of understand it. I don't know if I agree with it specifically. I had no issue with him per se. I thought he was good. I thought he was stronger in the second part of the movie after he finds out who he is. I think that helped as well because it gave him more depth to what he was doing and kind of, you know, added more to what was going on internally for his character. So I thought that was fine. And so as the movie gets into, you know, the third act, the action builds up and you know, it comes to a climax. And of course you have Macrinus and Lucius involved in the climax of the film as well. All right, so I'm going to get to what it's funny what I say didn't like, but my criticism of this movie, and I know I stated a couple of minutes ago that it's not a documentary on Rome. I'm not expecting it to be a documentary. You know, again, you know, with how accurate it is, whether it's the sharks in the Colosseum, whether it's Denzel Washington's character Ascension, being that he is a black man back then in Rome. I don't know if that's accurate, not accurate. But a lot of it is preposterous. Like it's the way they do it. They just, the story is fine, but it is kind of preposterous. Like to a point where you're like, okay, this is ridiculous. And especially if you're comparing it to the first Gladiator, which I think a lot of people done, then it really appears to be lacking in that way. So I think my reaction to the movie after watching it, because here's the thing, I enjoyed the movie. So for me, the key is if you just let the preposterousness go, I think you enjoy the movie a lot more. If the preposterousness of it bothers you, or you really are comparing it to the first Gladiator, then you're probably not going to like the movie at all. So for me, like I said, sitting there in the moment, watching the film, I enjoyed it. I liked it. I thought like I said, the acting was good all around. The action was good. I was entertained, to take the line from the first Gladiator, are you not entertained? I was entertained by the movie. Is it as good as the first Gladiator? Absolutely not. Is it a classic? No, it's not a classic. But for what it was, I enjoyed it. And it's funny, as I stated when I referenced Beetlejuice earlier in this podcast, it's almost similar in the sense that it's the same kind of thing I said about Beetlejuice. Is it as good as the first movie? No, but it was an enjoyable sequel. So I think Gladiator 2, for me anyway, acquitted itself in the sense that it wasn't a complete waste of time. It wasn't an awful movie. It is preposterous. I will grant those people that. And like I said, I read reviews after I watched the movie and before I came on the podcast, and people were kind of, the people that gave it a negative review kind of were leaning that way. And I understand the criticism. I don't think I hold it against this film as much as those people did. Now, there were a lot of positive reviews as well of people that liked the movie. So I probably fall in that camp. I did enjoy the movie. Faults and all. Like I said, as I was looking at the preposterousness, I just let it go and enjoyed it for the entertainment value. And if you look at it that way, I think you will enjoy the movie a lot more. Or if you can look at it that way, I think it will lend itself to you enjoying the film a lot more. And I did. I enjoyed it. Like I said, sitting there watching it, I wasn't like, what a waste of time. Or like I said, it wasn't, it had every chance to be absolutely terrible. And it's definitely not that for me. It may be for some other people that watched it or reviewed it. For me, it actually was not. I didn't think it was terrible at all. So I'm going to give, it's funny, I'm going to give Gladiator 2 the same number of stars that I gave Beetlejuice, which is going to be 3.5 out of 5 stars. So on that scale, that means the movie is watchable, entertaining. I give it a borderline recommendation. Will I see it again? And maybe when I watch again. But the bottom line is, if you haven't seen it before and you were a fan of the first movie and a fan of Ridley Scott and especially a fan of Denzel Washington, I think it's worth a check out. I think you'll enjoy it. Again, as I say, disclaimer, it's preposterous. If you just let that part of it go and just look at it as an entertainment, I think you'll like it a lot more. And especially if you're looking at it in a vacuum, because you don't need to see the first Gladiator to watch this movie. They reference it kind of a lot, and you'll know what's going on. Even if you looked at this kind of in a vacuum, even without looking at the first Gladiator, you may even like this movie even more than I did, just taking it on its face, by itself, and not as a sequel to a classic movie. So again, I'm going to give Gladiator 3.5 stars out of 5. Again, directed by Ridley Scott, who also directed the first one. You've got, like I said, Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Denzel Washington, Derek Jacobi, Connie Nielsen, and a large cast. And again, 3.5 stars out of 5 for Gladiator 2, directed by Ridley Scott. All right, again, I want to thank everyone that's downloaded the show and that has watched it on the video channels. Again, you can watch the show on X, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. So again, wherever you watch it, if you do watch the show, please click and subscribe on there. And like I said, you'll get notifications when episodes come on live. And also, like I said, leave a comment there wherever you watch the show. If you listen to this podcast, again, please, wherever you listen to it, if you can just rate and review, that again will help the exposure of the show. It'll help the show hopefully find people that enjoy movie podcasts. So again, like I said, a big goal this year for me, the big 3 goals are: 1, to get a larger viewership and listenership of the show. Number 2 is to be more consistent in putting out shows. I think in the last couple of weeks I've done that. I did 2 in 1 week. I've got 1 this week, and hopefully I'll have another show up in a couple of days. So I'm trying to get the content out there quicker, so people will have opportunities to listen to the show, hopefully become fans of the show, and go from there. And number 3, the big one is to see if I can up the financial support for the show. There is a cost associated with producing the podcast. And again, it's not prohibitive. I'm not stopping it for any reason. But again, anything you can do to chip in to help, that would be great. It all goes to defray the cost of running the show. I've got the website. I've got the streaming software. Just the things I need to build the show up. And like I said, hopefully if I can build the viewership and build the listenership and make the show become a lot more popular, I'll have opportunities where I can have smaller streams of income where I can support the show that way as well. But yeah, your support would be great. And if you do end up supporting the show financially, like I said, if you have suggestions on things you want to see, the other thing I'm going to try to do, is I've stated the last couple episodes and I'll keep stating it, I'm going to do my best to try to have guests on more often, which is I never do, because like I stated in the last episode, the reason I don't is not because I don't want to, and not because I don't find that enjoyable, because some of my favorite episodes are when I bring people on to discuss a movie or movies. is just my schedule is so busy, which is one of the reasons why content hasn't been consistent, and I'm trying to make an effort to do that, at least on my end. It's just difficult for me to schedule guests when I'm on the go all the time and expecting a guest to kind of work around my schedule when that's not fair. I should be able to at least work around their schedule, but I'm going to try to make a concerted effort to get guests on. And if you want to be a guest on the show, please feel free to email me. Email me at bendyourearpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's bendyourearpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to talk about a specific movie, a movie I've already reviewed, a movie that I haven't reviewed yet, something about a director, anything you want to talk about, I'm open to any discussion regarding movies. So please feel free to reach out if you want to get on the show. If you're on another podcast, even if you want to plug your own podcast here, that's great, because then I'll be happy to come on yours as well. If you need guests on your particular podcast, so please either reach out to me on X or email me. Like I said, all transparency, my schedule is tough, but if somebody reaches out and really wants to do it, like I said, I will make every effort to somehow make it work, because I do really want to get more guests on the show. That's another resolution, if you want, for the podcast for 2025. So I appreciate that. And again, I want to thank everybody for the support and the downloading of the audio podcast. Thank you so much. I am super appreciative of it. And like I said, I enjoy doing this, and it will continue to do it. And hopefully together we can grow the show. And every little bit that you guys have done or will do, I am very thankful. So again, I'm going to end the show with my review of Gladiator 2. Again, I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. Directed by Ridley Scott. It's streaming now on Paramount Plus, and I'm sure you can purchase it, rent it wherever you get your stuff digital. So again, thank you very much for listening to this episode. And like I said, please feel free to go to the website, letmebendYourEar.com, and you can get all the episodes there. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I will be seeing you soon with another